There is a certain kind of person. You have probably met them, or perhaps, quietly, in the stillness of your most honest moments. You are them. They move through the world with a particular softness in their eyes and a particular weight on their shoulders. They laugh, they show up, they say the right things at the right times. And yet, when the day is finally over, when the door closes behind them and the noise of the world fades, they exhale a breath they have been holding for hours. They sink into the silence. And somewhere in that silence, a small creature comes to them, without agenda, without judgment, without the need for anything to be explained or justified or performed. A cat. And for a few precious minutes, in the warmth of that small, purring presence, they feel something that the rest of the day rarely offered them. They feel safe. We live in a world that has decided, quietly and without much debate, that the preference for animal company over human company is a symptom, a red flag, a social deficit to be corrected or pitied. We have been told that loneliness is a disease, that introversion is a disorder, and that the person who comes home to a cat instead of a crowd is somehow failing at the project of being human. But what if we have it entirely backwards? What if the person who prefers the company of cats is not retreating from the world, but protecting something sacred within themselves from a world that has, on too many occasions, proven itself unkind? This is not a video about cats. It is a video about the architecture of the human heart, about the invisible wounds we carry, the walls we build not out of fear but out of wisdom, and the profound, underestimated intelligence of knowing when silence is more nourishing than noise. Stay with me. To understand why some people find more peace in the company of animals than in the company of other humans, we must first descend into the basement of the mind. We must visit a small, almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep within the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is ancient. It does not speak in language. It does not reason, negotiate, or philosophize. It operates entirely on a single primal question: is this safe? And here is what neuroscience has taught us. The amygdala learns from experience. Every interaction we have, every moment of warmth or coldness, every betrayal, every unexpected kindness, every time we reached out and found nothing there, is logged, catalogued, and filed away. Not consciously, not deliberately, but permanently. For some people, and this is crucial, the amygdala has learned through years of lived experience that other humans are unpredictable. That connection comes with conditions. That love has fine print, that the person sitting across from you may be smiling now, but can wound you in ways a stranger never could. Psychologists call this the internalized neglect schema. It is not simply the memory of past hurt. It is a deep, cellular-level belief, written into the body's nervous system, that intimacy is inherently dangerous, that to be truly seen is to be truly vulnerable to destruction. This schema does not arrive fully formed. It is built slowly over years. It is built in the home where love was conditional, where affection was given for performance and withdrawn as punishment, where the child learned, long before they had words for it, that who they were was never quite enough. It is built in the friendships that dissolved without explanation, in the relationships that promised safety and delivered chaos, in the workplace where kindness was mistaken for weakness and vulnerability for incompetence. And here is the part that most people never acknowledge. The person who has experienced this kind of invisible erosion does not stop wanting connection. They are not antisocial. They do not hate people. They grieve deeply and privately the kind of connection they have always longed for but rarely found. They are not cold, they are scorched. They have loved fully and without reservation, and learned that loving fully is an act of extraordinary risk. And so they become not heartless, but careful, not distant, but discerning. They learn to protect the most tender parts of themselves from the world's casual brutality. And then a cat arrives. A cat does not have an agenda. A cat does not want your performance. A cat is not impressed by your achievements or disappointed by your failures. A cat does not gaslight, manipulate, ghost, or betray. A cat simply is, present, warm, entirely itself, and it asks only that you be the same. For a nervous system that has been braced for impact for years, this is not a small thing. This is revolutionary. The amygdala, that ancient, exhausted sentinel, finally relaxes. The body softens, the breath deepens, and something that had been locked away behind years of accumulated caution begins slowly to emerge. Not weakness, not pathology, peace. There is a concept in Jungian psychology called the persona. Carl Jung described it as the mask we construct for public life, the curated version of ourselves that we present to the world in order to be accepted, respected, and loved. Every human being wears a persona to some degree. This is not dishonesty, it is social navigation. But for the person who has learned, through years of experience, that their authentic self is somehow too much or not enough, the persona becomes something more than a mask. It becomes a full-time performance, an exhausting, relentless, soul-depleting performance. Think about what it costs to maintain it. Every interaction requires a split-second calculation. Who does this person need me to be right now? How much of myself is safe to show? Am I being too much? Too little? Too intense? Too quiet? Every conversation is a subtle audition for continued acceptance, and the fear of rejection is a constant low-grade hum beneath every exchange. Psychologists who study metacognition, the process of thinking about one's own thinking, have found that highly sensitive individuals often engage in what they call second-order processing. While you are having a conversation with them, they are simultaneously monitoring the conversation from the outside, watching for cues that they are losing you, adjusting, compensating, performing. This is extraordinarily exhausting. Not because these people are anxious or neurotic, but because they are extraordinarily perceptive. They have developed through years of emotional survival a finely tuned sensitivity to other people's internal states. They know before you do when you are bored, when you are irritated, when your smile is real and when it is not. This is not a gift, not always. Sometimes it is a curse, to feel the emotional weather of every room you walk into, to absorb the unspoken tensions of every relationship you inhabit. This is not something you can simply turn off. It is a way of being in the world, an ancestral echo of all the times that reading the room correctly meant the difference between safety and harm. And so, after a day of performing, calculating, monitoring, and absorbing, they come home, and they close the door. And the relief they feel in that moment is not the relief of someone who dislikes people. It is the relief of someone who has been holding their breath all day and is finally allowed to exhale. The solitude they seek is not emptiness, it is sanctuary. It is the sacred stillness in which they are permitted, at last, to simply exist without being assessed, measured, or misunderstood. And the cat that curls against them in that silence is not a substitute for human connection. It is something different, and in its difference, something profound. It is companionship without performance, presence without pressure, the warmth of another living being without the weight of another human's expectations. For a fragile tapestry of a soul that has been pulled at from too many directions, this is not a small mercy. It is everything. There is a metaphor I want to offer you. Imagine the ocean. On the surface, the ocean is waves. Endless, restless, crashing, retreating. The waves are loud. The waves are visible. The waves demand attention. They are the emotions we feel, the reactions we have, the fears that surge and the griefs that break against the shore of our daily lives. But beneath the waves, beneath the turbulent, churning surface, the ocean is still, impossibly, profoundly still. The deeper you go, the quieter it becomes. Down there, at the very floor of everything, there is a silence so complete it feels almost sacred. The person who has learned to prefer solitude has, often without knowing it, learned to live closer to the ocean floor than most. The waves still happen, the feelings still surge, but somewhere in the architecture of their inner life, they have found, or are finding, a depth of stillness that is not numbness, not detachment, but something far more valuable. Equanimity. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote about the space between stimulus and response. In that space, he said, lies our freedom, our power, our capacity to choose who we become in the face of what happens to us. The person who has withdrawn into solitude has often found, even if they cannot name it, that space. The pause, the breath before the reaction. The moment of metacognitive awareness in which they can observe their own pain without being consumed by it. This is not cold, this is not detached. This is one of the most sophisticated emotional achievements a human being can reach. Carl Jung called the lifelong process of becoming fully oneself, of integrating the light and the shadow, the performed self and the authentic self, individuation. It is not a destination, it is a journey. And it is, Jung believed, the most important work a human being can do. The person who sits alone with their cat on a Tuesday evening, not out of social failure, but out of a deep and considered preference for silence. This person is often, without fanfare, without hashtags, without an audience, doing that work. They are listening to the quiet voice that gets drowned out in the noise of social obligation. They are attending to the parts of themselves that were never seen by others. They are, in the sacred stillness of their chosen solitude, slowly and carefully rebuilding a relationship with the most important person they have ever neglected, themselves. And the cat in their lap is not incidental to this process. It is in its own way a kind of witness, a warm, purring reminder that it is possible to be completely present, completely oneself, without apology, without performance, without the weight of anyone's expectations. There is a resonance in that, a deep, cellular resonance that the nervous system recognizes even when the mind cannot articulate it. Healing so often looks like nothing from the outside. It looks like a person alone in a quiet room. It looks like stillness. It looks like withdrawal. But inside that stillness, inside that apparent withdrawal, something extraordinary can be happening. The fragile tapestry is being rewoven, thread by thread, in silence. If any of this has resonated with you, if you have recognized yourself in these words, not with discomfort, but with the quiet relief of being seen, I want to say something to you directly. You are not broken. You are buried perhaps beneath years of adapting, performing, surviving, beneath the accumulated weight of all the times you opened yourself and were met with carelessness, or worse, beneath the internalized belief handed to you by a world that did not know how to hold you, that your particular way of being, your sensitivity, your need for depth over breadth, your preference for the honest silence of solitude over the exhausting performance of constant connection, is somehow wrong. It is not wrong. It is a response, a profoundly intelligent, deeply human response to a world that is, for certain kinds of souls, genuinely difficult to inhabit without armor. The work is not to force yourself back into the noise. The work is not to become someone who doesn't need the silence. The work, the real, sacred, lifelong work, is to understand the architecture of your own heart well enough to choose consciously what you let in and what you keep out. Not from fear, not from the old wounds reflex, but from genuine discernment, from the deep, earned wisdom of someone who knows what they need in order to remain whole. Self-reconciliation is not about fixing what is broken. It is about returning, gently and without judgment, to what was always whole within you. The part that loved, that longed, that hoped, and telling it, finally, that it was never the problem. The people who choose cats over crowds are not running away. They are, in their own quiet way, running towards something. Toward honesty, toward depth, toward the kind of presence that does not require you to be anyone other than exactly who you are. That is not antisocial. That is perhaps the most deeply social impulse of all, the longing for connection that is real. We end where we began. There is a certain kind of person. They move through the world quietly. They do not announce their depths. They do not perform their pain or broadcast their healing. They simply, slowly, carefully, in the company of silence and small, purring creatures, continue the ancient, unglamorous, endlessly worthwhile work of becoming more fully themselves. They are not remarkable in any way that the world currently knows how to celebrate. They do not have a personal brand built on their wounds. They are not influencers of their own suffering. They are ordinary and they are conscious. And in a world that mistakes noise for depth, performance for authenticity, and crowds for connection, the person who has chosen the sacred stillness, who has made peace with the beautiful limitation of their own solitude, who has learned to sit with themselves without flinching, that person is engaged in one of the most radical acts available to us. They are being real. So the next time you see someone who seems to love their cat a little too much, who goes home a little too eagerly, who seems a little too comfortable in their own silence, do not pity them. Learn from them, because somewhere inside that quiet life, there is a depth of self-knowledge that most of us spend our entire lives trying to reach, and never do. Thank you for being here. In the stillness between the words, that is where the real conversation happens.